we go. Welcome to another edition of Full Course Yellow here on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel and In Pit Lane Facebook page. We've got a group of Chris has just joined us as well. We've got Peter, we've got Mark Jones. So good evening, everybody. How are we?
Very well, thank you.
All right. Yep.
This is good. So we've got a bit to talk about tonight. So if you're joining us for the first time, this is just sort of a regular chat we get together of a Wednesday night. This is sort of the crew behind In Pit Lane. Thursday nights, Channel 31 at 9 o'clock, and of course on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel, extended version coming up at 9:30. I guess this week, Tamika McHenry, and if you don't know the name Tamika McHenry, hopefully you will one day, because she's one of the increasing number of young women who are getting heavily involved into motorsport and making a career for themselves behind the scenes in motorsport as an engineer. She's got a very impressive background. I mean, for her age, let's face it, everybody's young to me, but I mean, she's very, very young. She's got a degree in aviation, and then now she's doing a master's degree in mechanical engineering at the University of Melbourne. And in the past 12 months, she got into motorsport only 12 months ago, celebrated her first year in the sport on the weekend out at Sandown, and she's been involved with a lot of teams, and in fact has been involved in the setting up of something that's happening this weekend at Sandown, in the Sandown 500. They're testing a new fuel rig that one of the companies that she's been doing some work for has been involved in. So she's looking at that this weekend as well, sort of how that's going to work, and some improvements in sort of refueling safety and efficiency for the new Gen 3 cars. So anyway, so she's on tomorrow night. Also our music, Jessie Jackson. Pete, you were there. She was good, wasn't she?
Yep, she was very good.
Yeah, lovely person, and a couple of great songs. So Jessie Jackson, terrific entertainer. So
I had to laugh. She said, "Oh, you're the only name I remember," and I thought, I wonder why.
No, it's your checkered shirt, Pete. I mean, you stand out. I mean, you got somebody said the other week, Bill Park, the general manager at RMIT, was talking about sort of trying to get some funding, and he said, you just got to tick the boxes. He said, you got to do things with he said with women. Well, you got a lot of women working on the show, and you've got there. He said, but us disabled people. And at the moment, you sort of go swinging through there. And I said, I think we're covered in a couple of areas there. One, two. And Phil was asleep, and I said we could probably add him as well. So I think we've got those boxes covered. Anyway, let's welcome him before we start up the ticket. There's a lot to talk about today. Mad Cow Mark, g'day Mark, how are you? He's joining us tonight once again. Paul Vandenacker is with us once again. Box. Also with us, Dave Howard is also with us. So we caught up at Sandown on the weekend. Yes, and still getting used to Wednesday night, as indeed am I. So I still think that I said to somebody today, I was saying to Pete, I went down for a walk along the beach, and as I'm hopping out of the car from sort of across in front of the house, it's like, hey, I know you. You're the guy. So he came down and chatted. So I said to him, I said, be watching tonight for In Pit Lane, and then I thought, hang on, it's not Thursday, is it? It's Wednesday. But anyway, Jeffrey Whelan is joining us as well.
Good evening, Jeff.
So there we go. And Paul's asking, no green screen tonight, Chris.
No, I don't know how to get the new one to work yet.
Oh, okay. We got some new gear, have we?
Yeah, there's a bit of a story about viruses and what they do to your email system.
Oh, okay. So welcome to the wonderful world of Windows.
Yeah.
Okay, let's have a bit of a chat, because there has been some stuff happening over there. Tomorrow night, you will see one thing. I'll do say this quickly. I've got a story tomorrow night from Sandown on the weekend, and a very quick chat with James Moffat, where we talk about his
Yeah.
dominant weekend at the in the Trans Am. Well, as of today, the dominant weekend is not a dominant weekend because he was given, like 3 days after the event, he's been given a 30-second post-race penalty for his contact with our recent guest
Oh.
on the program, Elliot Barber. So Moff's perfect score at Sandown on the weekend in the Trans Am is not a perfect score anymore, unfortunately for him. And there were lots and lots of strange sort of penalties over the weekend. I haven't looked too closely at the one between him and Elliot, and also more on Elliot later as well. We've got some news from Elliot that the viewers of In Pit Lane might be interested in. But yeah, the one in the touring cars involving Ray Hislop and Jim Policina seemed very strange to me. I mean, Jim had locked his car up. He was out of control already. There was no help at all. And basically there was, Ray looked like he had nowhere to go and gave Jim a tap and turned him around and, copped a penalty, which cost him the second place in the race. So that was very disappointing. The racing was hard. There was good racing in pretty much all the categories, except apart possibly from Mark GT, which had a very small field, but they were quick. The two cars,
Yes.
the new Mark GT car which won, they were, and also Cam McLeod, slightly older car, they were running 1.9s. And 1.9 around Sandown is supercar sports sedan pace, almost GT3 pace. So
Well, we've seen Luke Gilden, amongst others, put in some absolutely blindingly quick time in the second generation Mark car at the Bathurst 12 hour a couple of years ago. So yeah, we've known that these are really quick cars in the right hands.
they're beautifully presented cars. I mean, my problem with them is they just don't fit any sort of category. I mean, they're almost a sports sedan, and they have built a sports sedan now, which I think might have been racing in Sydney on the weekend. But they're running their own series now, and there was only sort of 9 cars, which sort of turned into 8. The interesting thing was Warren Cleland, who's a long-time sports sedan racer here in Melbourne, had his first race in one, and he was saying afterwards that he was really keen to keep doing it. He said they're beautiful cars to drive. He said, and it was just so much easier, he said, than, the sort of, in terms of bang for buck, it was so much easier to sort of just go out and buy this thing from Mark Cars Australia and basically take it out and race it than it was to, all the years that he was running his RX-7 that he sort of built himself, and it was just sort of the backyard special. He said, and this thing, he said, just, straight out of the box. He was still getting used to it, but he said that it was a terrific car to drive. He was looking forward to probably doing more rounds. He said, I might race it in sports sedans, like at the state level, but I like these Mark cars. They're really good. So but it was an interesting.
And you do have another
Interesting.
Mark car down in your part of the world in running in sports sedans already.
Yes, that's they've done very well. I mean, and it's been consistency. That's been one of the things. That's interesting, Paul. Because I was expecting, because I'm planning on going down to Phillip Island. Paul Van Den Acker just saying that escorting a bunch of engineers around Phillip Island to get stuff sorted for the Grand Prix, and there was nothing on track and nothing set up in the garages or paddock. Because normally they start setting up, pretty early, and you go down about this time of year for the state round, which will be happening in a couple of weeks, and the grandstands are sort of being set up, and the corporate marquees and all the rest, everything's sort of getting set up already. So I'm surprised that I was expecting to see that sort of stuff down there on the weekend. So it's interesting that they haven't started. But I suppose as each year goes on, they get better and better and faster in setting all up. But they've made, of course, huge, some pretty substantial changes around the track in terms of safety for the MotoGP. So the one thing that they can't do, and the one thing that all the MotoGP guys will comment on, is they say, "Look, we love the circuit. We just don't like the wildlife." Because those Cape Barren geese, if you've not come into
Yes,
contact
of
with a
course.
Cape Barren geese, a Cape Barren goose is is a rather large and ferocious and utterly fearless beast. Sort of probably weighs about 15 to 20 kilos. They'd be good. I haven't eaten one. I imagine they'd be bloody good eating. They certainly I'd love to see the oven you'd cook it in though.
And they
yeah,
fly to Canada and back during their migration, so they're fit.
Yeah, and as I said, they're utterly fearless. You just see them like during any meeting at all, and they'll literally be walking on the track, and they'll hear the cars or the bikes, and they'll just slowly walk off at their own leisure. And the bikes or cars will miss them by that much, and they don't blink. And you can hit horns, you can throw things at them, and if you try and chase them yourself, you'll be the one who ends up getting chased. Because I've been chased a number of times around by, because I can't run anyway, so I just let them come and snap at my heels and carry on and all the rest of it. But they're formidable creatures, and they have done some big damage to a couple of cars, and I shudder to think what would happen if a bike ran into one of them at any stage.
There has been incidents in the past of seagulls and bikes intersecting on the run down the front chute.
Well, that's the other problem too. The one thing is apparently the geese keep the seagulls away. So they're sort of saying, well, if you get rid of the geese, you might get an influx of seagulls coming in to eat the food from the big crowds at the Grand Prix. And then you've got another problem because there was that famous shot like many years ago on Channel O as it was then, before it was Channel 10 with the Formula 5000s. Kevin Bartlett leading a Formula 5000 race at Phillip Island and coming round to what is now Stoner Corner. Suddenly this seagull disappeared into the big airbox on the back of the Lola. I think it was his Lola T300 at that stage, and then suddenly bits of seagull and lots of expensive-looking smoke pouring out of the Chev engine in the back of the Lola. So that was half a seagull stuffed into the airbox. But all of the riders have said, you've got to do something about this. The Cape Barren geese and the wildlife there, but there's nothing they can do about it. I mean, and there's also the wallabies. There's quite a lot of wallabies there. They mostly keep off the track, but occasionally they do wander on. At one of the bike meetings I went to last year, a wallaby got cleaned up, and a rider, of course. The rider ended up, I think, worse off than the wallaby. I think the wallaby got up and sort of jump away. Paul's saying six Cape Barren geese introduced to the island in 1984 now have a look at them. Yeah, I mean they are everywhere, especially, and they've just poured into the track. The track is now their home. You go around the rest of the island and they're there, but they just love the track because you have lots of grass. It's all freshly mown. Lots of insects flying up everywhere. Lots of food left over from when people are there eating and. Yeah, it's their property now. They have the rights. They just allow us to race cars and bikes on it occasionally.
That's right. They own it most of the time, really.
Yeah, well, that's it. Although the island is very very heavily booked out. I mean, it's like most tracks around Victoria. This weekend we've got every track has got a major event on. We've got the Sandown 500, of course, happening at Sandown. We've got the Winton 300 and the super trucks up at Winton. We've got the Victorian and South Australian bike state championships, the road racing championships down at Phillip Island, with lots and lots of the Australian superbike teams apparently have entered because their next round is at the MotoGP. And they're going there to get a bit of testing in beforehand. So apparently it's a lot of oversubscribed class. It'll be a great meeting. And as I say on this week's program, admission is free. So if you're not doing anything this weekend, and you as I said last night, if you are knocked back for a loan and you can't get to Sandown, head down make a day of it, or even make a weekend of it. Head on down to Phillip Island and just drive in. It's a free admission for the Pirelli Motel Victorian Road Racing Championships. And you'll get basically 3 days of great entertainment that'll basically cost you your egg and bacon rolls from the cafe. So yeah.
Oh, I miss the cafe at Phillip Island. I don't get to go there as often as I once did.
Yeah, the egg and bacon rolls are a speciality. I don't know what because they use all local stuff. The bacon, I don't know what the brand of bacon, but they are beautiful egg and bacon rolls. Although
England.
they're a lot more expensive now than when you were last down, Mark. I can tell you.
Possibly, yeah, possibly.
Yeah, yeah. I think they were probably sort of around the $5-6 mark back when you were there. They're a lot more expensive now. Brian O'Reilly's joined us, and he's saying was reporting. Yeah, it was about a year ago. That was the meeting I was at. Yeah, I'd got down there, and a wallaby. Yeah, turned 4. Um,
It is more of a Morgan Park problem traditionally, the wallabies. So much so that they do have famously they have the wallaby board.
oh, okay. So they've got a special. Well, yes. It's wonder they haven't
It's
got
on the
that.
back of the safety car board.
Right. Okay. That'd be good. That'd be a good T-shirt. I'm thinking. You know, what flag do you hang out for wallaby? Do you hang out the white flag? I suppose you'd hang out while the wallabies, bouncing around. You'd be hanging out the white flag. If the wallaby gets collected, you're hanging out the red and yellow flag.
Oh,
So, yeah. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, on the weekend, I was out at Sandown. The racing was really good, although the fields weren't huge. Crowd actually wasn't bad. Not a huge, certainly far from a huge crowd, but yeah, like a good crowd, great atmosphere, very friendly atmosphere, but a lot of changes at the Australian Racing Group. They've got a new, their CEO has quit, and now we find out yesterday that Motorsport Australia have taken back or have been handed back the television rights negotiate for the Speed Series. Because that's been one of the major criticisms of the championship has been the package that they've got on Stan Sport and the free to wear package of a Saturday afternoon on
it doesn't
9 Gem.
it doesn't make sense only watching one day, even if they put the 2 days like Channel 7 does with the supercars, even if they put it on at midnight, it would make more sense. Just watching one day, it doesn't make sense.
Well, the whole idea behind the only reason they're putting on the Saturday that they've got it on there is to try and to try and promote people to take out. Yeah, to subscribe to Stan. Now the problem with Stan is you can't just get the sports package. You've got to buy the main channel as well. So it's expensive for a start. Yes, there are some options. I mean, if you had Stan on Sunday, you could have watched the 6 hour at Fuji. They've been running the Indy cars as well, World Rally Championship. So there is a bit of motorsport
Formula E.
Formula E. So, but when you look at talking to some of the people, particularly in the TCR pit, some of the teams there were saying that it was a real hard sell for sponsors to sort of say like, oh yes, we've got television. Oh, where are you on television? Oh, we're on Stan. You're on what?
And this Saturday, anyway, it seemed a really funny schedule to me. They put the TCR weren't the last event. They put the TCRs on, and then it eventually finished under safety car, and then they had another event. So, but why not make that the headline event as the supercars do? They have it the last event on the program.
The schedule for the weekend was a bit strange all up. Even being out there, it was a bit all over the place. There was some categories was all but over by midday on Sunday, and then there were other categories that were sort of later in the afternoon, and some categories had their first race. Like the open wheelers, the Formula Open was there. There was no S5000, but Formula Open was there. I think that's probably the only option that S5000, and that'll be whether sort of Tim Macro and the guys at Formula Open are prepared to bring in cars that they're not that much faster, because the top Formula 3 cars are running very similar lap times to the S5000s. And I forgot how beautiful those Formula 3 cars are. They're perfectly proportioned open wheeler. They're just a lovely little race car.
Oh,
And,
Delara makes a very nice product.
yeah, and it was good to see them out there. There's only a few of them, but it was good to see them out there. And the racing up front between Ryan Howe and Trent Grubel was pretty good. It was okay up front, but whether they would want to, I was hoping to catch up with Tim. I just spoke to, I sort of said hello in passing, but it was very hard to get. People were very busy on the weekend. It was hard to catch up with people for a longer chat. So I would be interested to see if Tim would be, like, with his background in S5000, whether he would be open in perhaps to bringing them on board as part of Formula Open, and just sort of saying, look, we don't have enough S5000s by themselves, but if we combine if we get 6 or 7 S5000s and 5 or 6 Formula 3 cars, we might be able to come up with something that puts on a halfway decent race and a halfway decent grid. But I can't see any future for S5000 by itself, because talking to people out there, they just said there's just not enough. There's just not enough interest. As long as supercars, won't acknowledge them, and they're not a pathway to there. I've just seen Richard is there as well. G'day, Richard. Sorry about there. I just saw you pop up there.
There for a while, obviously it wasn't connecting. It's great listening to you guys.
There. Well, thank you. There. We do the show. Well, we do the show for us, basically.
Did anyone watch Goodwood?
I'm bits
halfway
of it.
through.
Boy, was that some fun? Was that you? Mark sent me a message. I was watching Sandown drag racing, which was very good. The European finals, which was fantastic in itself. And I got a message from Mark saying, oh my God, are you watching? Are you watching Goodwood now? If you're not, do.
Yeah, 1960s touring cars put on some wonderful racing. You had Jensen Button in an Alfa Romeo. You had God of NASCAR, Jimmy Johnson, driving a
Morris A 135, or was it?
Austin A40.
Austin 135.
And with Tom Christensen fighting the way through,
Dumas.
and Benoit Truex in that fight as well.
In a Thunder. What was it? What was Dumas? What was Dumas running?
Romain Dumas Romain Dumas was racing a Thunderbird up front.
Up front, yeah. The thing was running, and I mean they were just like. I mean, as I said online, I mean, and Dave Stillwell was saying, isn't it interesting to see the difference, between sort of, the tyres that they were running. They're running cross-ply tyres there apparently. And they said how much, because they were just sliding all over, but it was controlled sliding. Nothing looked out of, totally out of control. A couple of times it did, but just wonderful, drifting around, throwing the cars around. And as you say, who'd have ever thought that you'd be sitting there watching Jensen Button and Jimmy Johnson? One's driving an Alfa Romeo, the other one's driving an Austin A40, and they're running in amongst sort of Zephyrs and. Yeah. Well, Tom Christensen normally drives the the Galaxy, but that wasn't there this year. But he normally drives the Galaxy, and that's usually the car that dominates. But this year,
having a memory fail. What he was driving, was it a Ford? Possibly.
Karun Shandov was God.
Yeah, Karun Shandok was. He raced about everything, including a Ferrari, which unfortunately burst into flames. And there's been a habit of some of these expensive. But God, when you have a look at that field with the Ferraris. I mean, the millions and millions of dollars,
tens of millions of dollars each one. Yeah. And they're banging doors.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, go on the Goodwood YouTube channel.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just watch it. And of course, we run it in tomorrow night's show. We run the story there with Sir Jackie Stewart, 84 years old. Sir Jackie Stewart goes out on the Saturday, gets a lineup of all the greats. Mark Webber was racing there as well. He raced in the Porsches. And all of the champions all that, they were all there waiting, and out comes 84-year-old Sir Jackie Stewart in the Tyrrell 006, puts in a fairly slow, and then starts giving it a bit of welly. Then comes out on the Sunday, it's pouring with rain, and they go, well, we'll sort of, we'll understand if you don't go out, Jackie. And he's going, no, be buggered, I'm going out.
Yeah.
And out he was in the wet where the tyres were straight on, and the water's flying everywhere, and Jackie's having a ball.
Oh, it was just
I mean, how do you say
amazing.
no to him?
Yeah.
Lovely guy. I tell the story years ago. I think I might have told it on the show, but for some reason, I don't know how, I got invited to a do at Shane Warne's, obviously when he was local, Shane Warne's club at Club 23 at Crown Casino. And they had in Grand Prix week, they had this big sort of, do for the Grand Prix. And somehow, and I never know how, I got an invite. So I turn up and, there's all sorts of early, and Jackie Stewart is just wandering, and I'm wandering around. I don't, I know all the faces, but they don't know me. I'm just standing in the corner pretty much waiting to be thrown out, where they go, who the hell are you? But I'm just looking, and Jackie's wandering around by himself, and he walked up, and so I thought, he's by himself. I said, how are you? How are you, Jackie? And he said, nobody said, I don't know anybody. Nobody has a clue who I am. And I said, if it's any consolation, Jackie, I know who you are. And he looked at me and went, no, not really.
He's a funny bugger.
And then he turned around, and suddenly at that point, David Coulthard walked through the door, and he went, "Oh, thank God, I know someone. See you later." That was pretty much my turn to go. Okay, I'm going. Like the only people I knew, I knew Andrew Westacott was there, and the first thing he said was, "What are you doing here?" And then there was Craig Lansdell, and just as I was coming out, Mark, I went to get a drink, and Mark Webber turned up and grabbed a drink, so I knew Mark. I chatted to him for a second, but yeah, so Jackie was wandering, nobody, but it was full of soap opera stars and all these famous faces, and nobody, but they didn't know who's this little old guy wandering around with a scotch in his hand or something. Then it was Jackie looking as lost as I felt. So I just thought I'd pop up and say hello. But that's my only sort of conversation or interaction with the great Sir Jackie Stewart. Anyway. Mad Cow Mark saying, missing live drag racing from Sydney Dragway. So are the bike guys. This is something that's come up. They've basically banned the two-wheel competition at Sydney Dragway because they can't get insurance. Sydney Dragway is not part of ANDRA. They went their own way, and they're sanctioned by IHRA. And apparently the company, the insurance company behind that are backing IHRA or that have the policy with IHRA have apparently said, the cars will back. Bikes, no bikes. So they've basically had to say, I'm sorry, to all the two-wheel motorcycle to two-wheel drag racing competitors at Sydney Dragway. They've had to say, sorry guys, we can't run you until we can find a solution to this, because the insurance company we're using have simply said, no, we're not, too dangerous. We're not going to cover it.
Surely they would have thought this through before they took him up on it.
Well, you would think so. I mean, there's a lot of, because we know that drag racing has been fairly fraught with, politics over the years, and so there's a lot of people online, obviously the bike community, who were saying that, this, if you'd have stayed with ANDRA, this would not have happened. But you were trying to save some money, you were trying to sort of, bottom line it and, save a few dollars, and this is what it's got you. I mean, you've saved money in one respect, but now you've, and it will cost them a lot of money, because there are a lot of bikes at the drags. There are a lot of bike competitors at most meetings. Speaking of which, I mentioned all of the things that were happening around Melbourne. The one track I forgot, of course, was Calder, and if you go out to Calder on Sunday, the off-street drags are on, where they will be running bikes. There won't be any VHT down. That was one of the things that came up on the weekend for any drag racing people out there. I caught up with Kim Jane out at Sandown. He came and said hello, and I asked him about the drags. The plan that we were told, and it is in the calendar, for February next year, will be the final round of the Australian Sportsman Drag Racing Championships. The finals at Calder Park in February. Don't be surprised. Well, you won't be surprised. Don't be surprised if that doesn't happen. I think it shows a sort of a lack of full understanding. Because I said to Kim, "What's the situation with the drag racing?" And he said, "Love to have them. Yes, more the merrier. Come on board. Terrific. Yeah, love drag racing. Fantastic. As long as they don't put that shit on the track, meaning the VH2 or traction compound, we're happy to have them." Well, yeah, you can't have a full competition event without the traction compound. It just doesn't work. So I'm thinking that, and I said, "Well, what about that?" Then he went, Kim went, we'll see. But I'm thinking that it may not happen, because the original plan was basically to shut the place down for about 2 to 3 weeks, because it was going to take them a week to prepare the track. And this is the problem that that Rowan Harmon was saying with drag racing. He said it takes you a week to prepare the track. Then if they want to run circuit racing on it, it takes them 2 weeks to try and get rid of all of the VHT and the rubber build-up and all the rest of it on the track to make it suitable for circuit racing again. And right now, since they've sort of reopened, the bookings are so heavy, they just don't have time. He said, you go to all that trouble, he said, and suddenly he said that it rains on the Saturday. He said, you put in all that time, all that expense, all that preparation for nothing. So he said, and he said, until they can find a way of separating the drag strip and the circuit, and there is a plan to go back to the old glow weave corner scenario. But he was saying, they'd had it priced and it was going to cost an awful lot of money. And he just said, look, we just can't, at the moment, we simply can't justify spending that much money to make that happen at this stage. He also rather pointedly, pointed out that an awful lot of money, a huge amount of money, is heading in the direction of Avalon, whereas basically a tenth of that money spent at Calder Park could pretty much give them everything that they want anyway, and in a much closer place to the city. But anyway, that's the Russell's Lane. New safety rules bans the use of tyres or any surface within 10 minutes of the pole line at all venues. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that's probably a good thing too, because I know that I know if Stuart was here, he was probably within 10 metres of the pole line when he got cleaned up by a sprint car once. So you do have a look at sometimes at some of the things at speedways and go, what the? But great night of race. So Speedway is happening, and hopefully we've got Dean Thompson, who does a lot of the Speedway publicity for tracks around Melbourne, was in touch and saying that he'd really like to try and get sort of more of the Speedway guys on the show and all that, and we're well and truly open to it. It's just a matter of them putting their hand up and wanting to come on. So hopefully you'll be able to make that happen. And also talking about some giving away passes and all that sort of thing in the lead up to the new season. I see Nyora is opening up in a few weeks' time. The opening round at Avalon was postponed because of the conditions, and they're doing some work out there, and it wasn't quite ready. The track wasn't quite ready, or the pits weren't quite ready, one or the other. But Avalon will be going soon. Nyora's heading back. So I'd like to do more Speedway, and as I said before, Speedway is just a great television sport. I mean, it's very, very easy. Like a round of a state. Yeah, a round of to cover. I'll do a live stream from a place like Phillip Island or Sandown is going to cost you, between $18,000 to $25,000. To cover something from a speedway is probably going to cost you 2.5 to 5 maximum. 5 would be like overkill at most tracks. Because it's very simple to set up in terms of use 3 cameras and you've got the place covered. So so we'd like to do some stuff. If there's any speedway people out there watching and they'd like to get onto television one way or the other, onto Channel 31, also online, live or otherwise, let us know, because we've got all the gear. All the live gear is just sitting there and it's just not being used, and we'd be
Off
happy
to
to
Druin
use
again?
it. But Druin,
Brett, off
Druin
to
would be
yes.
yeah, Druin would be another one. We had a good day. We had a good day that day, didn't we?
Yeah.
Out of Druin, they made us
We
very
did.
welcome.
Very accommodating too. And
Accommodating, very
welcoming.
nice. Yes, we got a pie and some drinks and some chips, and they were very friendly. They were very friendly, and they actually had spots where you could film from. Message to circuits around Australia.
Yeah.
You want to make it cheaper? Put up some proper bloody camera positions.
Camera stands, yeah.
Notice that it was interesting to note that at Sandown on the weekend, the stand coverage. I'm not sure who did I think it's AVE out of Sydney who do the coverage for the Speed Series. They were running what was clearly I won't say a budget setup, but it probably had a smaller budget than the state round has for with Blendline. In terms of the gear that they had out there, they didn't have as many. They didn't have as much gear. They had Blendline have got the big, been putting up the big scaffolding and all the rest of it to get the shots. They were on the small platforms. It just looked like, you were going to say, Pete, what it looked like on screen.
To my untrained eye, it looked cheap.
That was one of the things. Yeah, that was one of the things that the people that said when I was out there in terms of their problems with the. They said it looked cheaper than for something that was major for a major event. It didn't have the polish and the production values. And having a look at it myself, and and whether people like to admit it or not, I've spent 40 years in this industry, and it's not just it's not like I'm a plumber of a daytime. My background is in film and television. I've taught at a tertiary level. I've worked at most of the television stations around Australia at some point in the distant past, and you can sort of tell when corners are being cut, and it did certainly look like that. And that was the thing that everybody was saying. It's like, we're paying a lot of money for this, and we're not getting the result we wanted. And a lot of people just keep saying, "Oh, I'd watch it, but where the hell is it? It's a stand. We just don't have. We don't have Stan. And if you could just get,
they stick it on the secondary 9 channels. Like it was on 9 Go on the weekend because 9 Gem had some rugby thing or something.
I think that some rugby thing was the World Cup, actually.
Oh.
It's still a thing.
It's still a thing. Well, I think that's it. I mean, that's what I say. When I think Stan Sport, I think that's the rugby channel.
Yeah.
And I don't know, they're saying, oh, we've got all these people. There's so many people on, subscribing to Stan Sport at the moment. Yeah, I can understand that, like if you're a rugby fan in particular, that's the place to go. But really, outside of New South Wales and Queensland and various, elite private schools in Melbourne, nobody's interested in rugby. The rest of us, it's like, it's just, the Bledisloe Cup gets some good ratings. And I think that's on free to wear as well. Everything else, I just don't think has, as I say, there is a World Cup happening. I mean, Mark, you probably know more about it than I would, but I think it's, there is a World Cup happening at the moment or something, and I've heard nothing about it.
Oh, you're not watching morning news at Channel 9. They're flogging rugby day in, day out. I've gone back to I've just gone looking at Yahoo News. It's just not worth it anymore. And of course, ABC is full of the voice to Parliament thing, and God, it's just so torturous. Sorry, I've had my little rant.
There you go. Speaking of little rants, here's a rant from Paul saying the first Avalon's 7th of October. First sprint car event is 14th of October. Great venue out at Avalon. The racing is terrific. Keep going. It's at the moment with all the bloody roadworks on the all the roadworks on the bridge. And with the new Westgate Tunnel being there, it's an absolute bugger to get to from this side of the city. I know a couple of people who went sort of to one of the late meetings last year. It took them nearly 3.5 hours to get home from, and it was like, they left it just after midnight and got home with like a family of three. They lived just up the road from me, and they just said it was 3.5 hours, and yeah, we loved it. We had a great time, but it was like, we think, and there's no alternative. There's really no public transport options down there to make it any easier. But if you're on that side of the city, particularly if you're from Geelong, a fabulous place to go and watch some racing. But that's going to be the problem. I mean, with the new track at Avalon. I mean, how are people going to get there? There's basically one road in there. And there's no public, as far as I know, there's no public transport options to it unless they do something to build some public transport options.
Oh,
It
took
could become a
Queensland
bit
Raceway
like
a
the
decade.
Bend.
Sorry,
Sorry?
I was just sorry. I thought you were pausing for breath at the wrong moment there, Brett. I was saying that Queensland Raceway had to learn the hard way on when they opened, and they didn't have they just didn't have good access in and out of the circuit, and the traffic queue to get into the track at that first Supercars meeting in 1999 was it was taking people hours to get in. And
Well, Richard would know about the Avalon Air Show every
Oh,
year. I mean, the traffic
yeah.
jams
Mm.
coming out of there. I mean, they're big. I mean, Paul's saying like, people should learn to use Google Maps. But I'm not sure what options you've got when you've got huge crowds coming out of the air show, or a racetrack when it's eventually built there. What options you've got to sort of to make it easier to get out, because there's not too many options to escape from the joint.
There is a train line out there, except there's no railway station
Well, that's
anywhere near it.
That's pretty easily taken care
Yeah,
of.
you would think you'd think so, wouldn't you?
If you remember, I don't know whether you ever went out on it, Richard, but like back in the day at Calder, they used to build a temporary platform.
Yes,
At the back, and you get a
yeah,
free.
they did.
Yeah, you get a free. It
oh,
was
that's
a free
brilliant.
ride. You
Train
go.
and
Yeah,
shuttle bus.
yeah. You
Yeah,
jump.
straight to the door.
Yeah.
Oh, that's some great thinking.
John D saying a bus from Lara Station is a low-cost solution that works for the air show. Okay, so there's an option there. But yeah, I mean, if wherever you can get close by, if you've got a regular thing of stuff, you've just got to make sure you've got enough buses to cater for everybody. I attended a thing just recently called Saturday in Design, which is a trade show for the design industry. And they had shuttle buses, and it was a complete disaster. They had nowhere near enough buses. People were waiting for hours, and people who had come from not just interstate but also overseas were just going, "I'm going home. That's it. I'm not waiting any longer. I've had enough of this." And just going off, they were getting Ubers to get to the next venue. They were but a lot of them just said, "No, I'm going to play tourist. I'm going to have something to eat in Melbourne. I'm flying out of the joint. I've had enough of this." So, So Paul's saying, and Paul's done getting to the freeway from the air show. The show had express buses to Lara, but the traffic management company effed up, keeping the public away from the bus route, and killed the express buses completely.
Yeah,
And that's the problem with buses.
I heard that on the news.
Yeah.
I heard that on the news when at the
so
time.
you've got to, you can do that, but the buses just aren't they're subject to traffic like everybody else, unless you have dedicated bus lanes and dedicated things so they can just press a button and just cruise through the traffic lights and be express. I mean, if they're express, that's fine. But there was lots of bus replacements on the Dandenong. Coming home from the show a couple of times. Now from out here, I catch the train into Melbourne of a Tuesday night, and coming home, it takes just over an hour to get back to Hallam Station, just down the road. When the buses were a replacement, when you had done, some of them were express buses to Dandenong, it was taking like the best part of 2.5 hours sometimes to get out of the bloody joint. So the buses are a problem. But anyway, they've got a long time. We've got a long time before the place is built, if it gets built. And it's a big if, because already the state opposition have basically said, we're not committing to this. We'll have a look at it. But at this stage, there is no commitment. And, as I said, the state opposition sports spokesperson and the deputy opposition leader were both out at Calder Park recently getting a tour of the place. So, there you go.
What do you think? They're going to throw money at Calder rather than Avalon?
Well, in a way, to me, I know it would be lovely to have like a full FIA Level 2 circuit and all the things that are needed out there. I mean, as a replacement for Sandown. But I mean, I don't know if anybody's noticed at the moment, but times are tough financially. And yeah, I think that there'll be we saw what happened with the Commonwealth Games, and I think it wouldn't surprise me if at some stage they say the same thing about the circuit. They're only at the next level of sort of examining how much it's actually going to cost. Wouldn't surprise me at all when they turn around and tell them how much it is actually going to cost, that they'll turn around and say, look, we simply can't justify spending that amount of money on a car racing circuit. And they're talking about sort of, grandstands that'll hold, 40, 50,000 people. And that's, where are they going to fill that up?
Yeah.
What on earth, apart from possibly supercars, and even that, I doubt they're going to fill that. Where the hell are they going to fill up all these grandstands?
How often is? I mean,
they
Phillip
could turn it
Island.
into Sorry. I was going to say they could turn it into a horse racing circuit, have a 40,000 person grandstand, no one turns up and no one will even care.
Well, there is that too. But the point is, that's not well. I suppose it is, but that's gambling. That's gambling money. That's the thing. I mean, that's why that's the only hope Sandown has of any further thing, is that there are the people within the Melbourne Racing Club, the older people, are saying they do not want Sandown to close down, because they're saying, we don't need the money. We get a bucket load of money from gambling and from all of those sorts of things. Yes, we will get $7 million or however much they're talking about selling the place for, but do we need $7 million? I mean, we've got it from other places, and we're giving away this this valuable resource in the middle of the most accessible racetrack, and it's booked every day. It's not just for, I mean, when they're not running horse racing there of a midweek, I go past on the train or go up to shop at Springvale regularly, and they've got V8 ride days, and there's driver training and four-wheel drive training, and I saw a lot of police out there the other day. They were doing police driver training out at, they were doing slaloms in the car park, and they had people doing high-speed stuff on the circuit. So it's regularly used. It's not as if the place is just sitting there empty for, Yeah, Jeff's saying, do we have an opposition party? It's a very good question. I think it depends on what time is it in terms there. We don't even know who's the leader this week, But anyway, that's another issue. Okay, Formula One coming back. So there, once again, Daniel Ricciardo not there, but we're going to Singapore. They've made some changes to the track. Pete, do you know anything about the changes they've made?
No.
Yeah, they've made some. They have made some. And I know that Williams are out there saying that like the changes they've made are going to be better for them. They're saying that the track's apparently a bit more open than it was, and they're looking forward to it. And then at the same time, Red Bull are probably trying to give us hope, because Tim Horner's saying, "Oh, I don't think it will be as dominant at Singapore as we have everywhere. I think we're going to really be struggling here. I think Mercedes and Ferrari are really going to give us a hard time in Singapore." Mercedes are going, "What, you reckon?"
I do know that there's been flexing of the wings that they're cracking down on. They're going to crack down on. They're going to crack down on it this weekend. But yeah, I didn't know of of any changes to the track.
Yeah, I don't think they're radical changes, but I think they're enough to sort of, like I know that that William said we're quite happy having a look at it and running stuff through the simulator. They think that they're going to be still very competitive on what would normally be a tough track for them. And as I said, Daniel Ricciardo not running, so Liam Lawson gets his chance again, and it's looking like Yuki Tsunoda is
Under pressure,
yeah, under a lot of pressure because apparently there's a new team boss coming into AlphaTauri, and he's basically said that the focus of the team, which has been sort of young drivers and developing young drivers, may be changing under his sort of under his control. And in fact, he said we've got Daniel Ricciardo, and we think that's a good move. Another experienced driver would be good because we've got to be competitive. There's no point us running around just making up numbers. If we're going to continue doing this thing, the team's got to be competitive, and to be competitive, we need top drivers.
Yeah, and he's been linked. Yuki, I think, has been linked. I remember reading to Alfa Romeo.
Right, yeah. Well, it's interesting. They're obviously good. They're obviously a good team because Valtteri Bottas is saying that he said this is Alfa Romeo being a part of that team has given him a new lease on life in Formula One. He's saying he's having a ball there. He said they're a fabulous team to work with, and he's 100% committed to that team in the future. Whatever happens, sort of. But they're obviously sort of going to be changing in the next couple of years. There's going to be a lot of money thrown at them, so. I'd be surprised if Tsunoda was part of their long term plans going forward. But we'll see. But that's coming up this way. So so Formula One back. MotoGP. Jack Miller. I'm not sure about his long term future. He's through the. He went down again with the KTM on the way, and he's now admitted, look, I'm having a bit of a struggle with this bike. I don't have the confidence in it that I had in the past with the Ducati. It's not, it's just not holding on. It's not giving me the level of adhesion and the level of control that I really am comfortable with. And there's talk about KTM making some changes for the team and wanting to bring in some younger European riders, and they sort of said there probably won't be room for everybody, and the rumour going around is that Jack might be the one who's under some pressure. So so he's perhaps struggling. I think he'll get another ride somewhere. I'm pretty sure he will, possibly with the Ducati satellite team, because he did very well for them, and he seems to have a very good relationship with the factory at Ducati. They seem to get on very well. They were sort of disappointed to lose him, and he was sort of disappointed to leave. So Boxone, the only track with suitable peasant transport is Albert Park. You need more than one way to get there and back again. Yeah, well, Sandown's pretty good as well. I mean, you've got the train, and you've got a train every 20 minutes. On the weekend and more in peak hour, so you can sort of pop down on the train and get off at the train station pretty easy and just walk across it. So you've certainly got that option there, and there are also bus options as well from around here. You can just jump. There's about 4 or 5 buses that go either one way or the other past Sandown that you can jump on. So there's plenty of options to Sandown. But yeah, if you want to go, this is the problem for when you got to put your tracks out in the middle of nowhere, and this is what's happening in America. The tracks are getting further and further and further out, and so the casual fan just doesn't turn up. That's why the whole RV thing is so big in America. If you're a hardcore race fan in America, you really do need an RV, because if you want to go, it's going to be a 3 or 4 hour drive, and you want to stay there for the weekend.
That's heading to Morgan Park is a 3 hour drive from here in Brisbane, so it's not, and of course Phillip Island is about the same, isn't it? It's maybe a bit more. It's
from Melbourne, it's about bit over 2 from the heart of Melbourne, I suppose. I'm about 90 minutes from I'm about 90 minutes from here, and it's about sort of about 2 hours, I suppose, from the heart of Melbourne. So it's and they have enough trouble getting crowds in there. I mean, they're lucky with the bikes because a huge slab of the crowd go down on bikes, and it's much easier to get them in and out of the joint than it is, like a whole pile of cars. But that's one of the reasons that the supercars stopped going there because, as Tony Cochran said, he said if we could just lift this whole track up and put it somewhere close to Melbourne, it would be wonderful. But it's not. It's out here in the middle of nowhere. And it was a problem.
That's all very wishful thinking when they're thinking of closing Sandown down.
Just getting back to Singapore track, I do remember actually last year that there was civil construction work going on, so they had to make changes to the track. But I didn't know what they were, but I do remember them talking about it last year.
Right.
Well, it's essentially the chicane that goes under the grandstand in the back half of the lap is being deleted, and it's just a straight run from turn 16 to turn 20 now.
Yep.
Okay, well, I suppose getting rid of that stop go. So do they still run under the grandstand? 'Cause that was really cool. That's a shame.
Yeah, I understand that, but that's the bit that's being cut out, basically.
That's been cut out. Yeah. So Paul's saying you can get from Morgan Park to Brisbane Airport in 2 hours in Sunday night traffic. So but we know how Paul drives.
And I'm an hour to the north of on the far northern suburbs of Brisbane anyway, so it's basically just it's an additional hour for me just to get to the starting point.
That's the same with me from Winton. Everybody, like people from Winton, say, "Oh, it's only 2.5 hours up the road," but it takes me up the road from any.
We don't all start
road. It takes an hour to with good traffic. It'll take me 45 minutes to an hour to get to the start of that road. And from then on, yes, it is only 2.5 hours from sort of from the northern fringes of Melbourne. Yes, it is a couple of hours, but from everybody else, for people who live down this way, and Richard, how long does it take? Which way do you go from? Do you go up the back way or do you go by the freeway?
I have tried the back way, and they're always doing roadworks, and it's meant to be only 80k, but then they do roadworks and they'll say it's 60, and the guy in front will do 40 or 50. And even though it's technically a lot shorter, and then you've got to wind through the hills.
And then in
the
winter you
with
got
the trailer on the back.
the ski freaks going up to like cruising up and for the weekend.
Or the wood trucks. You can always get the wood trucks in front.
And tractors.
Or you can go the hour and a half, which drives you into the middle of the city, and then you can do your 2.5 hours up from the centre of city.
I used to have this argument with Melissa because she would always want to go to the back because she said but it's a better road. It's fun. You're going there. That's fine when sort of when your job is being you're being lent a Porsche or something like that to play with on the way up there. But in the old laser or in Getsy at the moment, I just find it's much easier. Just jump on the freeway and just go. And it's basically I'm literally out the door onto Pound Road, turn left onto the freeway, and I don't get off of a freeway until I take the turn off onto Winton.
Not a single traffic light until you actually get to Benalla. And so instead of getting, some person's towing their horse float down up a windy hill, and you go, I could get out and have lunch.
I think this is the other problem too. The back way, we see more kangaroo hits on the home run than the Hume. That's very true too. I've had a few near misses. Chris, you cleaned up a kangaroo around that area too, didn't you, at one stage?
Several times over the years, yeah.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. I know Carolina, who used to work on the show, she clobbered one, I think, coming home from home that way. So, Yeah, I had a few close calls coming back that way, and it's as you say with the Hume, you've got a lot of traffic on there, which hopefully keeps the wildlife away a bit. So, and then you've got the option, and which I did last time. I mean, because of my back and all the rest, I don't want to be there. Driving too long it gets pretty painful, and you've got places to stop off. You've got all of the roadhouses on the way up, but you can turn off into towns on the way through and grab a pie like I did last time I went up there, or just stop off, have a canned lunch at a pub in Seymour or something like that. It makes it a much more relaxing drive. Although if you go the back way, you can go to there's a lot of good wineries on the back way, including De Bortley's and Sandown and a few other
some
places.
great scenery. Some really cool scenery.
Oh, great roads too, as you say. As long as you don't as long as the weather conditions are good, and you've got a car to enjoy it in. But as I said, all that downhill and uphill and all that in Getsy. I mean, there's a lot of you're working that gearbox pretty bloody hard, and it's like whereas I just get onto the freeway and throw it into fifth and just turn on the radio and cruise up.
All right. Well, the Ranger does the back way quite well, but then again, I can't carry any of a fraction of the gear in the Ranger as I can in the van. And the van, I think I can. I know I can as it goes up the hills.
Yeah. So Paul, 2 hours 15 to go to his place in the in the outer west. That's a good run because it takes me about 90. Because what you forget is the Phillip Island is pretty big as well. It's like you say, you get to the bridge and you think, oh, I'm here. But then you've got another sort of, probably half an hour, depending on the traffic, you've got another half hour probably before you get to the damn track. So, but anyway, hey, listen, we've got through the hour and we've had a good chat and about all sorts of things. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember to be watching tomorrow night. Now, I did mention Elliot Barber. When Elliot Barber came into the program a couple of weeks ago for the first show of the new series, before he left, he said, hey, listen, my sponsor is Pioneer DJ, and they produce, like DJ equipment, professional, really, DJ. Would you like something to give away? Well, at Sandown on the weekend, he stopped me and said, hey, if you're interested, I've got the gear. It's in the car, and what he's given us is a couple of Pioneer DJ consoles. They're worth about $300 each. I've had a look at the online. They look fantastic. They interface with your iPad or your iPhone or something. They do all sorts of amazing stuff that I can't even begin to. And all the scratching and all of the special effects and the fading between tracks and beat matching and. We're going to be giving these away on the show over the next few weeks. So thank you to Elliot Barber and Pioneer DJ for making that possible. So that's coming up in the weeks to come. And as I said, tomorrow night on the program, our special guest Tamika McHenry, really interesting story. And in a way, I was a little disappointed in a way because you listen to her story and there are still very much barriers involved for young women getting involved into the sport, which really surprised me and disappointed me.
I thought you were going to say you were a little disappointed because someone had to cut you off.
No, that's your job, Pete. That's your job. That's what you're there for. That's why we pay you the big bucks.
Time management is a skill not given to everyone.
Yeah, well, that's it. And in television, boy, oh boy, it's like, and we were tight. It was very packed last night. Very packed program last night. I had to do a bit of massaging to fit us into the 24. Didn't quite get it. We're actually a minute over this, but 31 haven't complained. So so tomorrow night, Tamika McHenry, our guest, also Priya Richards came in. So we've had Richards' family in for 2 weeks in a row. Clay came in last week as a guest. And Priya came in last night as a friend of Tamika. So we've had sort of we've had the whole Richards clan in over the years. We started with Jim, then with Steve, then with Clay, and now with Priya. So we've had most of the generations of Richards have in fact been covered. So they're a lovely family too. So that was great to see them last night. And as I said, our muso last night, Jesse Jackson, was fantastic. And have a look. And once again, congratulations to the RMI TV crew as well. We've got a lot of new people in there, a lot of inexperienced people, and they really knocked it out of the park in terms of the lighting and camera and sound and all the rest. It was fabulous. So watch that tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, Channel 31, and then extended version popping up on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel on demand from about 9:30 tomorrow night. Once I find the time to get that up there and edit it and all the rest of it. But right now, we'll say to everybody, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, everybody, for joining us, all the regulars. Really do appreciate your support coming in, and we'll see you next week on Full Course Yellow. Until then, from all of us, thanks for joining us, and we'll say bye for now. See you later, everyone.